Hilchas Shveses Yom Tov, the laws of resting on the holidays. B'chlolon Shtei mitzvahs. There are 12 mitzvahs over here. Sheish mitzvahs, 6 positive commands. The sheish mitzvahs, loisa say, and 7 and 6 prohibit negative commands. Here's the problem. These are them. One is a positive commandment to rest on the first day of Pesach, and then the negative commandment not to do work. 2 laws, one positive of the 7th day of Pesach to rest, and then a negative commandment not to do work. Number 5, 5 and 6 is that we should rest on Shavuos and we should not do work, positive and negative. As you can see, the parallels over here. 7 and 8. That we should rest on Rosh Hashanah and we should not do work. 9 and 10. We should rest on the first day of the holiday of Sukkot and we should not do any forbidden work. 11 and 12. Finally, that we should rest on the 8th day, Shmini Atzeres, the Simchas Torah, on the 8th day of the holiday, and we should not do any forbidden work. So let us get right into this. Hold on one second.
They'll give me a share, so I won't be able to reply again. But basically, when you share the screen on the top, they click the drop down and ask for permission to run your screen, and then you approve it, and then they can do it.
Okay. Batya, are you in a position that you could scroll my screen if I give you permission to do that?
Let me check.
Hold on.
They'll give me a share, so I won't be able to reply again. But basically, when you share the screen on the top, they click the drop down and ask for permission to run your screen, and then you approve it, and then they can do it.
Okay, hold on one second.
I cannot.
Right, when I share the screen, I need to do it then. Multiple representatives can share simultaneously. Okay. This is multiple. Now see if you can take my screen and you see that you can do that. Okay, I don't see. Okay. Okay. Sheishes yami meile shel oshem akoso ba'asis malachim shein bishon mishvi shel pesach shel chag sukkos v'yom chag shvuos v'echad l'chaydesh hashvi hu nikra yomim tovim. So these are the holidays that are known, that are the 1st and 7th day of the Pesach, the 1st and the 8th days of Sukkos, the holiday of Shavuos, and the 1st and the 1st of the 7th month, which is Rosh Hashanah. So these holidays, they're all forbidden with all the types of work, with the exception of preparation for food, as it says in the verse. Only the labor from which all souls will eat may you perform. So a holiday, we can perform those things that are the preparation, the eating of food and the preparation for food. Halacha 2. Kol ha'shevis melachos avedus ve'echad mehem harei kaim mitzvah sharei nemar b'hem Shabbos and Kloimer Shabbos. So anybody that rests from doing any forbidden labor on these days, you fulfill a positive commandment, as the verse says, Shabbosin, which means Shabbos, to rest. So if someone, on the other hand, that does any kind of work that is not for the need of food, of the holidays. We will see many details in this, like you build or you destroy, you put down something, or you weave. You have now nullified a positive commandment and also transgressed a prohibition of the Torah. Now, if you did any of these things that are not connected with food on the holiday, and you were warned by witnesses, then you would get lashes as a punishment. Halacha number 3. So a person who performed several forbidden things on the holiday, and they were warned, like they planted, they build, they destroyed, they weave, and they received a single warning from an individual, the person only gets a single set of lashes. There's a distinction between the categories of forbidden labor on Shabbos, but there is no such distinction on the holidays. So, in other words, on Shabbos you can get many different punishments, but there is no distinction on the holiday. In other words, it's just one category of work, and if you did it, therefore you get a one time as a punishment. Halacha number 4. So any kind of forbidden activity that is on Shabbos, that you did it on Yom Tov, that was not for food, you would get then you would get stripes, you would get lashes, except for carrying from one domain to another, and also kindling a fire. Why kindling a fire? The reason why you're able to carry on the holiday is because you can carry for the need of eating. So now you can carry even if it's not for the need of eating. Therefore, on Yom Tov, you can take out a child in a stroller. You can take out a Torah scroll and carry it. Mafteach, a key, you can carry it on Yom Tov. From one domain to one domain. In other words, since we can carry for food, so we can also carry for things that are non-food essentials, like carrying a key. You're allowed to do that. That's it's called mitoich. Likewise, to kindle a flame, you could do that also, even if it's not for the need of the food. And likewise, other things, other kinds of labors that are for food, for example, slaughtering an animal, baking, or kneading, all of these things are allowed to be done on Yom Tov. However, things that have nothing to do with the area of food, like writing, weaving, and building, and the like, these things are forbidden. Halacha number 5. Any kind of work that you could do on the eve of the holiday, and you are not losing anything by doing it. So if you could do it before the holiday, the rabbis, even though biblically you could do it on the holiday itself, but if you could do it before, then you don't lose anything. It doesn't cause a loss or an inadequacy to what you're doing. Then you're not allowed to do it on the holiday itself. Even if when it comes to the matter of food. So why, if it's for food, you're allowed to do all types of food preparation on the holiday itself? So he says this is a decree. So Yom Tov. Why? Because if you're going to leave everything for the holiday, and you're going to do all the preparations, the food preparations on the holidays, then you're not going to have you're not going to be able to celebrate the holiday because you're going to be so engaged in making the preparations, you won't even have time to food and to take pleasure in it, and therefore you will not be celebrating the holiday properly. Therefore, whatever you can do before the holiday that has to do with the preparation for the food, and it will not take away from the taste of it, or you won't lose anything from it, then do it before the holiday. Halacha vav 6. And for this reason, that's why carrying on the holiday, transferring articles from one domain to another, is not forbidden. Even though you could carry something before. In other words, carry the items that you need that are preparing for the food. You can bring it to the house beforehand. But no. So why isn't it not forbidden if you could do this before the holiday? In order to make greater the holiday joy. In order that you can bring whatever you want, whenever you want. And like your hands are tied, and I forgot this, I can't bring this, I can't do that because I can't bring it, and therefore that's going to take away from the enjoyment of the holiday. However, the other kinds of works that you could do on Yom Tov, since you could do them before the holiday, do them before the holiday. Caring is not a real, work, but the other things might be a real work, and therefore take away from your holiday celebration, which caring is not the case. Halacha 7. Ketzad. So, what's an example? We didn't harvest or thresh. Not winnow or separate. And then we don't grind the grain. We don't sift flour on Yom Tov. All these things can be done before the holiday, and it's not going to make the food less, tasty on the holiday, right? However, kneading, baking, and slaughtering, and cooking, Yom Tov, we do that on Yom Tov. Because if you do it on, if you do it before the holiday, then when you eat it on the holiday, what's it called? Leftovers. It doesn't have the same taste as when you cook it right when you need it. So even though you could prepare it beforehand, it's taking away the taste. Therefore, you're allowed to cook and to slaughter, to bake, to knead, to cook on the holidays. Bread that's baked on today is much better than bread that was baked yesterday, and likewise any other kind of food preparation. Likewise, even slaughtering and having it on that day that you slaughtered it, it's fresh meat, much better. Even though we don't So similarly, when it comes to grinding spices and the like, we can perform that on the holiday itself. Why? Because it's going to be fresh and therefore better. Number 9, it is forbidden to bake and to cook food on the holiday if you're cooking it for the weekday. The fact that that we have permission to do the actions, the work on a holiday is only in order that you can have pleasure on the holiday. However, if you cooked on Yom Tov for the pleasure of eating the food on Yom Tov, then you have leftovers that you can eat on the following days after the holiday. Halacha number 10. So a woman can fill up the pot with a lot of meat, even though maybe she only needs one piece for the holiday. Likewise, a baker can fill up a whole drum of water to boil, although all it needs is one simple jug, a small amount. So a woman can fill up the whole oven with bread, but maybe all she needs is one loaf. So why could you do it if all you need is for the holiday, the one? It's because when you put many in those back in the day, they're kind of ovens, it baked things better. And also you can salt several pieces of meat, even though all you need is one piece for the holiday. Because it's not much of an effort to do it, and therefore it is permissible. Number 11, someone who cooks or bakes on the holiday in order to eat on the day. So there was leftover, you have guests coming, and they didn't come. Right, so you cooked, you baked in order to eat on Yom Tov or to have a guest, but they didn't come, and there's leftovers. It is permissible to eat them on the following day, whether it is a regular weekday or Shabbos. But you can't do this with guile. So if you do it with guile, and that's what you're trying to fool. You're trying to, you really didn't invite guests, and therefore you baked for guests, but you really didn't invite them. You just said it, right? No. The rabbis then made it even more stringent that you can't even eat that after Shabbos for the following Shabbos. That's even worse than somebody who violated it purposefully when we do things, when we try to trick, like as if there is no God. Hi. Number 12. If you have an animal and it is dangerously sick, and they may die on Yom Tov, and therefore, what's going to happen? You're going to lose out on an animal because it's a sickly animal. So therefore, you want to slaughter it in order to save it, and that you get something out of it instead of a dead animal. You shouldn't do that unless you're going to at least eat a kazayas, in other words, a piece of meat that you will bake, that you will put it on roasted at least for the holiday. Why? Because then otherwise you're slaughtering it in order that you can have it for the weekday, and that is not allowed. You can slaughter it on the holiday in order to have something, even if it's a small amount. Number 13, you're not allowed to cook and bake on Shabbos in order to give food to non-Jews. In other words, you have enough food for yourself, but you want to make for, you're going to have some non-Jews over to the house, or for your animals. You're not allowed to do that. Why? Because the verse says very clearly, it is only for you, lachem b'loy l'kusim, for you and not for non-Jews and not for animals. Therefore, you're allowed to invite a non-Jew on Shabbos, but on a holiday is a bit of a problem to invite them. Why? Because maybe now you're going to cook extra for the non-Jew. You're not allowed to cook for the non-Jew. You're allowed to only to cook for yourself. But if a non-Jew does come to your table on their own accord, you're allowed to feed them because you already made the preparations. Halacha number 14. What if you have an animal that's owned half by a Jew and half by a non-Jew? So you're allowed to slaughter it on Yom Tov because you are not able to eat from it even one piece of meat, a kazayas worth, like 3 ounces of, or like, not 3 ounces, that's like one slice of bread's worth, size worth of meat without slaughtering the entire of the animal. However, if you have a piece of dough that half of it belongs to the Jew and half to the non-Jew, you have to divide it because that's dividable, and then you could bake it. if soldiers came and non-Jewish soldiers came and they gave flour to a Jew and they said, bake it for us on the holiday. So you could bake it for the soldiers as long as you can take a piece of that bread and give it to your child, then it would be permitted to bake for them, because at least the Jew is having some kind of benefit. And of course here, because we're talking about soldiers, and if you don't do it for them, it could be not so good. When shepherds also eat from the loaves they give to the dogs, these loaves can be baked on the holidays because even though the dogs are getting it, right, the dogs are protecting the sheep. That's okay, because again, the shepherds who are having from the loaves. Number 15. So if a person did cook extra for a non-Jew or for their animals, or to have extra for the weekday, that person would not get stripes, would not get lashes, because if guests did in fact come on the holiday, it would be fitting for them, and they did do for themselves. They were also doing for others, but then in that respect, they would not get lashes. And if you prepared for yourself food, and there does remain food, then you are able to give it to afterwards, to a non-Jew or to your animals. Number 16, bathing and anointing oneself on the holidays is considered to be included in the general category of eating and drinking. In other words, it's part of the celebrative part of the holiday. How do we learn this out? Because it's only the labor from which all souls or persons will eat, or you can perform. Meaning all things that are for the body are permitted, like anointing yourself and bathing yourself is included in that. Therefore, you can heat up water on the holiday. Of course, this is from an existing flame, right? Which we'll get into later. And you can wash your face and your hands and your feet. But you can't wash yourself, can't have a complete shower, a complete bathing. This is a decree because of the bathhouse. So there was a decree that maybe the bathhouses are now warming it up specifically for you, and therefore that would not be permitted as a result. But when water was heated before the start of the holiday, one can wash the entire body with it on the holiday if it was done from before. The prohibition of doing it was only on Shabbos, but on Yom Tov you could if it was heated up beforehand. That's the difference if you did it rather than the bathhouses. Number 17. So anything that is prohibited on Shabbos, whether it is similar to a forbidden labor, or might bring you only to a forbidden labor, or whether it was rabbinic law, it's likewise also forbidden on Yom Tov, except for the areas that we mentioned, right? Unless it's for the needs of the body, for food, and the likewise as we mentioned. Likewise, things that are permissible on Yom Tov, So all those things that are forbidden to carry on Shabbos are also forbidden to carry on Yom Tov. Unless it's for the need of food, as we mentioned. Everything that is permissible on Shabbos, mutar b'Yom Tov. Yesh b'Yom Tov. However, so we're making the parallels of everything between Shabbos and Yom Tov, right? It's all the same, except again for the idea of oichel nefesh, as it's called, food, food for the soul. That's what the actual literal term, food for the soul, right? But there is a distinction Yom Tov that is more stringent than Shabbos. Also muktzah, shehuktzah, also b'Yom Tov, b'mutah b'Shabbos, midei she'eh Yom Tov, kal b'Shabbos, also b'Shema, shehuktzah, shem yovel zalzel. So there's something called muktzah. Muktzah means things that you can't, that you can't touch on a holiday that might be permitted on Shabbos. And the rationale is very simple, because Yom Tov is so much more lenient than Shabbos. Our sages said that there are certain things they forbade that are muktzah, that you can't touch, because that way you won't come to disrespect the holiday as a result. We're going to go into that, what that means in halacha number 18. If a chicken was set aside to lay eggs, right? And a ox to plow. And doves that are in their dovekot, in their domain, or fruits that are there for business. You're selling those fruits, right? In other words, you're not eating those fruits. These are doves that are for selling or for raising, and likewise the ox is for plowing the field, right? Not for slaughtering. And also the chicken is there to lay the eggs, not for slaughtering to eat it on the holiday, right? So all of these things are instances where you did not think about using it for the holiday. Case of muksa vein also lechol mehem b'Yom Tov. So these things are forbidden to now handle on the holiday, right? Unless you prepare them before the holiday, or you have a mindfulness that you're going to use it to eat on the holiday. Shabbos, that's not the law. Everything is prepared for Shabbos. You don't need the preparation of Shabbos. In other words, beforehand, that you want to use this, whatever particular thing that you want to use for Shabbos. Shame. Muksa also b'Yom Tov kach hanelid also. So just as muksa is forbidden on the holiday, likewise something that came into existence on the holiday is forbidden, as we will learn. Number 19. A weekday can prepare for Shabbos, and a weekday can prepare for the holiday. But you can't prepare from a holiday to Shabbos. In other words, if Friday is a Shabbos, you can't prepare from Friday for Shabbos, except we'll learn about the Eruv that we can do, but Erev Tafshilin, but we'll learn that about later. But you're not allowed to. And Shabbos can't prepare for the holiday. In other words, each one is holy for itself and unto itself. So what is the point over here? The point for this is that if a egg was laid b'Yom Tov on the Yom Tov achara Shabbos asura, after Shabbos, in other words, it was on Sunday. It was the egg was laid on the holiday that follows the Shabbos, it's forbidden. Even though this chicken was there ready, you had it ready to slaughter it. Because what happened? That means Shabbos was preparing for Yom Tov, because Shabbos the previous day was when the egg was finished. It became complete. So it's as if Shabbos is preparing for Yom Tov, and therefore you're not allowed to. Also, the whole Yom Tov Beitz and Nimsa Shabbos Meichel Nizal Yom Tov Asru B'Chol Yom Tov Zerish Mishum Shabbos L'Achar Shabbos. And then the rabbis came and said it made a decree that even further, even if it's a Yom Tov that's in the middle of the week, not just after Shabbos, also you're not allowed to have this what's called Noiled that gave birth, that came into existence. It wasn't there beforehand. That came beforehand. You're not allowed to have it even if it's during the weekday, because because Shabbos may prepare for Yom Tov for that reason. In other words, when there's Shabbos and then Sunday is Yom Tov. Likewise, any egg that was laid on Shabbos, also there's a decree that you're not allowed to eat it on the Shabbos, lest one eat the egg that was on Shabbos that follows a holiday. In other words, then then the holiday will be preparing for Shabbos. The whole point over here is that each holy day cannot prepare for a holy day. You can only have a mundane weekday that can prepare for a holy day, but not a holy day for a holy day. Not for a Shabbos to a holy day to a Shabbos, because they're holy. That's the concept over here. Number 20. So what happens if you had one egg that now was later on Yom Tov, and it got mixed with 1,000 other eggs that were permissible? All of them are not permissible on Yom Tov. Why? Because tomorrow will not be Yom Tov, and all of them will be permissible. It's only because on Yom Tov you're not allowed to have something that was born on Yom Tov that wasn't existing before. Why? Because it becomes muksa, because you didn't have your mind on it, because it wasn't yet there in existence. If you slaughtered a chicken and it had finished eggs in it, those eggs are permissible to be used, because this is not something that is usually happens, and therefore the rabbis did not make a decree in such an instance. Now, 21. It's called Yom Tov. This that we do in the diaspora, we make 2 days of Yom Tov. This is a custom, the Yom Tov, that is custom that's law today. The Yom Tov Sheni Divrei Seifrim, and this is a rabbinic law, the second day of Yom Tov, and this is something that has developed because we're in exile, in diaspora. And those that live in the Holy Land of Israel, they don't make 2 days; they only make 1 day, except for Rosh Hashanah. So we will learn later in the laws of sanctifying the new month of why this is so. Well, we'll wait for that. Halacha 22. Yom Tov Sheni Afal Pishu Midivrei Seifrim. Second day of Yom Tov, even though it is rabbinic law, called also B'Sheni. Nonetheless, whatever was biblically not permitted on the first day is also not permitted on the second day. Yom Tov Sheni Afilish. Rosh Hashanah, Bein B'Davishu, Mishum Shvus, Bein Malacha, Bein Shiatza Letchol, Makinis and Makinis Nardes. Now, someone who is not careful on the second day of holiday because they think, it's only rabbinic law, and they're not careful with those laws, whether it's going outside of the tchum of the area that you can walk, they will get rabbinic lashes, or they could get also ostracized if they are not a Torah scholar having students. So just as on the first day of Yom Tov, you're not allowed to make eulogies and you're not allowed to fast, and you're obliged to have joy on the holiday. Likewise, in the second day, the only difference between the two is when it comes to a corpse that has passed away. What does that mean? Halacha number 23 explains Hamesh v'Yom Tov Rishon Yisasku b'Tvur Asar Akusim v'Yom Tov Sheni Yisasku bo Yisrael. A Jew that passed away on the first day of the holiday, they should not be engaged in burying the individual. They should have non-Jews engaged in it. But on the second day, a Jew is able to be engaged in it, because remember, this is only rabbinic a law on the second day. But like called and he can do all the things that are necessary on the second day. Like asiyas mita, making the buyer, the beer rather, that it lies on. Sewing the shrouds, and also picking the herbs that are necessary in order that the corpse should not smell. The second day of the holiday for a person that passed away is considered to be like a weekday. And even this applies to the second day of Rosh Hashanah, even though for other things it doesn't. This is again for a person that passed away, even though today that the halacha we don't observe it that way because of other reasons, but for another time. Halacha 24. Final halacha in this chapter. Shnei Yomim Tovim Me'ela Shel Golias. These 2 days, the 2 days observed in the diaspora. Shtei Kedusha same. There are 2 levels of holiness. They're not like one day, they're separate days. Therefore, therefore, that if something was muksa on the first day, or it came into existence on the first day, it becomes permitted on the second day if it was designated for use on that day. What's an example of this? Oops, sorry, 1 second. If an egg was laid on the first day of holiday, you can eat it on the second day. If a beast or a beast or fowl that was trapped on the first day, it could be eaten on the second day. The first day it can't be because it wasn't prepared, right? But the second day it could be. Something that was connected to the ground, therefore wasn't prepared on the first day, but on the second day, if it was disconnected from the ground, someone chopped it off, let's say a non-Jew did that, in a permissible way, then you could now prepare it to use it for the second day. Likewise, if you have some anointment that you need for the eye, so it is permissible second day. Even though there wasn't a sickness on the first day. This is only when you have 2 days of holidays in the diaspora. But on the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, they're considered one, like 48-hour, 1 day, so to speak. They have only one holiness, not 2 separate holiness. They're considered like 1 day. For all of this, only when it comes to a corpse, they are considered like a separate day that you can do something for the corpse to bury. But if it was a egg that was laid on the first day, it is not permitted for the second day. Okay. Whew. Chapter 2. A chicken that hatched on the holiday, it's forbidden to be handled because it's muktzah, right? That it's muktzah. ואילו שחט ימי, היה זה שמנהל מותר ביום טוב, אף על פי שנולד ביום טוב. So, a different ruling applies though when you have a calf that was born on the holiday. If its mother was already designated to be, you set aside the calf, right? You set aside the mother, right? The calf is also permitted, for it's considered to be designated because of its mother. If the mother had been slaughtered on the holiday, the calf in her womb would also be permitted to be eaten on the holiday, even though it had not been yet born. Guys, the slaughter makes this calf permitted. Number 2. So we're learning about laws over here. What is considered prepared? What do I have in mind that's prepared? So we had in the first halacha difference between an egg that's laid or the calf that's born. Now, what about the animals that go out and they gaze beyond the city limits? So therefore, they're beyond the city limits. They're not something you can, they're not within your range that you can use them, right? However, they return and then spend the night within the city limits. Therefore, this is considered prepared. In other words, you have in your mind that you could use these animals, and you can therefore take them and you can slaughter them, the Yom Tov. But if they are grazing and residing outside of the boundary of 2,000 amos that one is allowed to go, and they come on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to slaughter that animal on Yom Tov. Why? Because this is called muktzah. In other words, you did not have in mind that you would be able to use them because they graze and reside outside of the tchum, and therefore your mind wasn't on it. You didn't have a focus on it. It is not permissible. Halacha number 13. Likewise, if there is an animal that has a consecrated animal that became blemished, so now it no longer can be consecrated, right? It can't be used for the Beis Hamikdash. This is in times of the Holy Temple. But since it was consecrated when the holiday came in, and then it only got the blemish, so you didn't have your mind on it that you would slaughter it. Therefore, you're not allowed to slaughter it. Therefore, you're not allowed to show if there's a blemish on a consecrated animal on Yom Tov to a scholar, because maybe that person is going to say, will make it permissible, and because of the moon, and therefore the person is going to come and slaughter the animal. But you can show it before Yom Tov, and if the rabbi only comes and tells you afterwards whether it's permissible or not, that's okay. Halacha number 4. Now, what happens on the day of the holiday? A firstborn animal is born with a blemish, right? It's a firstborn animal, right? So it belongs to the Kohen. It's not considered as if you were prepared to slaughter, right? So nevertheless, the blemish should not be inspected on the holiday. But if you did get it inspected, right, and you transgress in that manner, and the rule and the Torah scholar, he declared that the animal is permitted to be slaughtered. One is permitted to slaughter and partake of its meat, even though that's not what you should have done. When the firstborn animal falls into a pit on the holiday, right? So it's a firstborn, so you're not allowed to, it's muktzah, because you're not allowed to use it, right? So what you should do is give it its necessary food while it's in the pit, and since it's muktzah, one would not be allowed to pull it out because it's not fit to slaughter on the holiday. Now, when a cow and a calf both fall into this pit, right, we may take out one of them with the intent of slaughtering it. right? Where this is not a because there's a law, you're not allowed to slaughter the cow with the mother with the calf on the same day, right? So you're not allowed to slaughter them at the same time, rather, right? So you could take one out with the intent of slaughtering it, and then don't slaughter it, right? This is sort of, there's an act of guile over here because you took it with the intent to slaughter, but then you don't, in order that you can take out the other one. And then you can choose either one that you want to slaughter. You have to slaughter one of them. Now, why could you act in guile over here? Because the animal is suffering. Tsar Balei Chaim, and therefore, because of that, therefore, the rabbi said in such a way, you can have a guile in order to remove both of them from the pit, that they shouldn't suffer. Right? And that's different than previous halacha. Now, an unconsecrated animal that fell from the roof and stood for an entire day, right? It means meaning it's not a holy animal, right? It's yours. It needs an inspection to see if we can partake in it. If it's if it's still if something happened to it. Nevertheless, and you shouldn't. So the question is about the inspection over here. You can slaughter it and then inspect it. For the possibility exists that it's going to be kosher, and then the meat could be eaten. So you're allowed to do that. In other words, this is all permitted in order they can have the joy of the holiday. Because of for time purposes, I'm just going to read it, tell you over outside. All ducks, chickens, and doves that are kept in a person's home are considered to be prepared for slaughter. They don't need to be designated. However, if the same doves are in the dovecote, or that by the nest in one's loft, or the fowl is in the nest, in the basin, in the buildings, or in the orchards, they're considered muksa, because you didn't have in mind that you're going to use it to slaughter it on the holiday, to use it for the holiday, right? So how could you make those particular animals? You need to prepare them. The previous day, you have to designate. It says, I will take from these, or I'll take from those. You don't have to actually touch the animal, right? You just have to go next to it and say, I'm designating this and that I'm going to use on the holiday. Okay. The fact, again, there's a mindfulness over here. And the whole reason why you can't make muksas, remember, is because we may be, because of the leniency of the holiday, we may not act properly on the holiday and go overboard in things that are not permissible. We will be kind of lackadaisical because of the leniencies that we're allowed to cook and we're allowed to carry and so on and so forth. Halacha number 6. Now, what happened if you designated both black and white doves, and the following day you only found white doves in the place of the black ones, and the black ones in the place of the white ones? It's forbidden. You can't take from them. Why? Because it's possible that those doves that were designated flew away, and these are others. So it has to be actually what you plan on using. Therefore, we follow the principle that whenever we're in doubt, whether the doves are designated or not, it's forbidden. Right? In other words, you can't take from that particular dove and slaughter it on the holiday in order that you can now use it for the holiday. Now, if they were designated 2 and you found 3, you found more, they're all forbidden. If you designated 3 and only found 2, they're permitted. Why? Because we say that maybe just one of them flew away. If he designated doves inside the nest, but found them in the front of the nest, it's permitted because we say they just moved a bit. Provided, though, that these are the only doves in the nest and that they're unable to fly. Although there are another nest within 50 cubits on a diagonal, these doves are permitted for the doves that waddle only a straight line to their nest. Halacha number 7. Now, if you have a fish in a large pond and beasts like deer, or fowl in large pens, and other beasts that has been snared by a trap to the point that where it's necessary to say, bring a net so that we can snare it, this is considered forbidden because they're not snared on the holiday. I'm sorry, they can't be snared on the holiday. And if they are, and if it is snared, it may not be eaten because it's in a big area. It's in a big area, and it's not like they were set aside. By contrast, though, any animal that was snared, that can be snared without a net, is considered to be designated. It may be snared on the holiday, and we partake of it. In other words, if you can get it without a net, without snaring it in some manner, it's easy pickings, then it's considered as it's designated. Similarly, a wild beast establishes its home in the orchard near the city. Its small offsprings do not require the effort to capture it. They don't need to be designated, the small little ones, because one has in mind to take them for food for the holiday. Number 8, although on the day before the holiday, a hunter sets snares for the beast, fowl, or for fish on the holiday itself, he should not take the living creatures that were captured unless he knows that they were captured before the holiday. Right? Because this is, again, something that you didn't expect. Has to be prepared. When a person makes a dam for a water conduit on the day before the holiday and gets up early in the morning and finds fish there, they are permitted. They were already trapped before the commencement of the holiday, hence they are considered to be designated to be eaten. In other words, you made by the dam a water in the water conduit, you set there that you can get fish. So we already, so they're already trapped before the holiday, therefore they are already being designated that they can be used for the holiday, right? When it comes to, though, that's the fish. When it comes to beasts that need capturing, in other words, they're not simply captured by no, then it's unpermitted. Number 9, when a closed building was filled with produce that has been designated for use and was opened by the natural forces on the holiday, one is permitted to take the produce from the opening. Sorry. Others, we don't say because the doors were closed and therefore it wasn't designated for use. It is designated for use. A person who stands and surveys fruit set out to dry on the day prior to the holiday on a sabbatical year, when all produce is ownerless, must make a mark and say, I will take the produce from here to here. If he did not make a mark, he may not take the produce. Right? The sabbatical year doesn't belong to you. So now you have to designate it. You have to actually make a mark and saying that this I am going to use for the holiday. Number 10, the following rules apply when a non-Jew brings a present of food for a Jew on a holiday. If some of the type of the produce that he brings is still attached to the ground in the fields, or if he brought an animal, fowl, or a fish that could possibly have been ensnared on the day of the holiday, they're forbidden until the evening. Right? Because in other words, they were not set aside. They're not something that would have been set aside in his mind that he's thinking of. He's getting something from a gift for someone that's coming to his home. Moreover, one must wait enough time for it to have been possible to perform the forbidden activity after the conclusion of the holiday. Even if the non-Jew brings a myrtle or the like, one should not smell its fragrance until the evening after waiting the time necessary to pick it. If none of the type of produce that he brings remains attached to the ground, in other words, it's not produce that usually remains attached to the ground, or it is clear from the form of the produce that it was picked on the previous day. Remember the issue over here that it was taken today, and therefore you could not, if it was taken from something that you could not have had, have done that yourself. Therefore, you couldn't have your mind on it and thinking that this would be something for you to use. Therefore, it's not usable. It's muktzah. But if it would have been the previous day, then it would have been picked. So if you see from the form of it, right, from the fish or the animal, that it wasn't just clearly now ensnared, captured today, but it was maybe from a day or so before, then it is permissible. Provided it's caught within the city limits, again, the tchum of Shabbos, otherwise would be forbidden. Food that was brought in from the outside of beyond 2,000 cubits for one limit, which is the limit for a Jew, is permitted to be eaten by someone else. Okay, number 11. When branches fall from a palm tree on a holiday, right? So you didn't have in mind that it would be, something from that palm tree that you make use of. It's forbidden to use for firewood because this was something that now wasn't in existence before, becomes into existence because the tree branch fell. If, however, it fell directly into the oven, one may add a larger quantity of wood prepared for kindling. One may kindle it. So you can add wood to it if it fell right into your oven. Again, it's giving parameters, probably not the normal thing that would happen, but it would be permissible. One may not begin taking a pile of straw or storage pile of wood on the holiday unless one prepared to do so on the previous day, for they are muktzah. Again, if you have straw or a pile of wood that was that was not prepared, it is muktzah. If the straw is mixed with thorns, it is permitted. For its only possible use is kindling, right? Because wood may not necessarily be just for kindling, but thorns are only for kindling, and therefore if straw got mixed in it, then it would be permitted to use it because the thorns there are for kindling, only for kindling. Halacha number 12. It is forbidden to chop wood that has been placed in a pile of beams for its muktzah, right? Because it was probably put there for a pile of beams for building purposes, not for putting it into the fire on the holiday. Therefore, it's muktzah. Nor may weigh on chopped wood from a beam that broke on the holiday because it is noiled, right? So if that piece of wood fell down and now you want to chop it so you can use it for firewood, no, because that's noiled. In other words, it came into existence. Therefore, you didn't have your mind on it before that you would be able to use it. Similarly, utensils that broke on the holiday may not be used for kindling because that is also noiled. Noiled means new, brought into new existence, like an egg that didn't exist beforehand. However, one may use utensils that are intact or utensils that are broken before the commencement of the holiday for kindling, for they were prepared to be used for purposes other than which they were originally suitable before the holiday. Right? So you have a wicker basket that is kind of falling apart. Well, it's something you could have used for the holiday to carry something. So therefore you could use this kindling wood, even though you didn't have specifically in mind for the kindling wood. Similarly, when nuts or almonds were eaten before the commencement of the holiday, their shells may be used for the kindling on the holiday. If, however, they were eaten on the holiday, their shells may not be used for kindling. There are, however, versions of Talmud that read that if they were eaten before nightfall, they may not be used for shells for kindling because they have become muktzah. If, by contrast, they were eaten on the holiday, they may be used for kindling because they are considered to be designated for the use because of the food they contain. So there's an opinion that's a complete opposite one from the other here in number 12. Number 13. Now, freshly cut thorny branch is muktzah. Why? Because it's not fit for kindling. It's still fresh. Therefore, one may not use it as a spit for roasting meat. So now you might want to use it for roasting meat, which you don't need dried out piece of a branch, but you can't because you didn't have in mind, because mostly it's used for branches of wood for kindling. So it's drying out in the field, and therefore you didn't have in mind that you would use it for roasting. Therefore, it's not permissible. The same applies in all similar situations. Number 14. One may take wood that is placed next to the walls of the hut to use for kindling, but we may not bring it from the field, even if it had been collected there on the day before the holiday. right? So next to the walls of the hut, there you're allowed to, because that's more designated. But in the fields, it's not designated. One may, however, collect wood lying before him in the field and kindle it there. There you could, but not to bring it elsewhere. One may also bring wood that was stored in a private domain, even one was not enclosed for the purpose of human habitation, provided it has a fence with a gate and is located within Sabbath limits. Even if one of these conditions are not met, wood is muksa. So you need all of these conditions to be met. It has to be near the fence, has the human habitation, and so. Number 50. Although the leaves of reeds and vines have been collected in an enclosure, since they can be dispersed by the wind, it is considered as if they have already been dispersed, and using them is forbidden. So you collected reeds, vines, but they're very flimsy. A wind can come and move them away. They'll be dispersed. Therefore, even if they weren't dispersed, you're not allowed to use them because they are muktzah. If, however, one places a heavy utensil over them before the holiday, they become permitted to be used, right? These are things that you can use for either tying things or whatever you would need for Yom Tov purposes. But again, there's the mindfulness and the proper designation. The fact that you put something heavy over it and it won't fly means a proper designation. But if you didn't, then you did designate it properly, and therefore it's not considered that you had a mind designation over it. Number 16, the following rules apply when an animal dies on the holiday. If it was very ill on the day before the holiday, one may cut it up and feed it to the dogs. Right? Remember, it died on you. It's not kosher now, but you can cut it up and feed it to the dogs. Why? Because you knew it was sick already beforehand. If not, since he had not had it in mind, it is muktzah and should not be moved. Right? It wasn't very ill. Right? So therefore you didn't have a mindfulness that, might die on the holiday, right? If not, since he had not had it in mind, it was muktzah. Okay. When a consecrated animal dies or a truma becomes impure on the holiday, it may not be moved, right? Because you can't use it for yourself or for the animals. Therefore, you have nothing they can be used for. It is muktzah. Fish, fowl, and beasts that are muktzah may not be given water on the holiday, nor is it permitted to place food before them. This is a safeguard instituted lest one come to take them and slaughter them and use them, right? Any object of a living creature that are forbidden to be eaten or used on a holiday because they are muktzah are also forbidden to be carried, right? Number 18, when a person brings earth into his domain on the day before the holiday. Why do you bring earth over there? Because the houses were, the floors were made from earth. And if there was some dirt that got on the floor, so you can take some dirt or earth and cover it over on the holiday. Shabbos, you can't do it, but on a holiday you could do it. So it's considered to be prepared for use. The fact that you brought some earth and put it into the corner of your home, that's called designation, right? And therefore you could use it for whatever needs you have, again, to cover dirt or excrement and the like. Similarly, ash that came from fuel burned on the previous day is considered to be prepared for use. If it came from fuel burned on the holiday itself, it is permitted for use as long as it is warm enough to cook an egg. In other words, it's still warm from the fire, for it is still considered to be fire. In other words, it has the law of fire, not ash. If it was not warm, then carrying it would be forbidden. Why? Because it's noilet. It became something new. Noilet is something new. The following rules apply when a person has an iron shaft implanted in the ground before the holiday and he pulls it out on the holiday, uprooting earth. If the earth is powdery, then it can be used to cover any spills, and it may be carried for that purpose. If, however, the person raised up a clod of earth, it may not be not crumbled on the holiday. That is not allowed. Finish the second chapter, now the third chapter. I'm here, your only host today. A person. It's going much quicker when I just read in English. I want to afterwards have everybody's input on what is better. Me just reading the English and explaining, or reading in the Hebrew and saying in my own words. Usually, I usually say it in my own words. So I need you to share with me afterwards what is better. A person who has earth that has been prepared, or ash that has been prepared, and that may be carried, then if you have all that prepared, then you can slaughter fowl or a beast and cover their blood, which is a mitzvah that you have to do, covering the blood of a fowl or a beast, not of an animal. Of a cow, we don't have that mitzvah, but for a beast and fowl, you do. If he does not have earth that has been prepared, or ash that has been carried, he should not slaughter a fowl or a beast on the holiday, because you can't then fulfill the mitzvah of kisui dam, of covering the blood. Which, by the way, some of you may have done by when you do if you did Erev Yom Tov, Erev Yom Kippur, kaparis, right? Then you do that mitzvah of covering the blood. Okay, if he transgresses and does in fact slaughter the fowl or the beast on the holiday, he should not cover it in the blood until the evening. Again, because he didn't designate the straw, or the ashes, or the earth. Similarly, on a holiday, one should not slaughter an animal concerning which there is a doubt whether it is a wild beast or a domestic animal. Wild beast needs to be covered with covering the blood. A domestic animal like a cow doesn't need. If a person does slaughter such an animal on the holiday, he should not cover the blood until the evening, right? If you have a crossbreed and you don't know if it's domestic or wild beast, then like a deer with it was like a deer with a goat, some kind of crossbreed. Right? The deer is wild animal, and the goat is domestic. This applies even when one had earth, it was prepared with ash, available, lest the observer conclude that the animal was definitely categorized as a beast, and its blood was therefore covered on the holiday, and there was right there an air, and consider the fat of this animal to be permitted. So it's an animal, fats of the animal, of the domestic animal, need to be removed, and the person might think that therefore it's permitted, because it might think that this is a domestic animal, not a whatchamacallit, therefore don't do it. Don't cover. Right? Number 2. Similarly, if a person slaughtered a beast or a fowl before the holiday and did not cover the blood at that time, he may not cover it on the holiday. If a person slaughtered both domestic animal and beast or fowl on the holiday, and the blood became mixed, he should not cover it until the evening following the holiday, right? Because maybe it does need, maybe it should be covered, maybe it shouldn't be covered. Remember, a domestic doesn't get covered, only fowl and beast. If he had earth that he was prepared or ash, and it is possible for him to cover all the blood with one shovelful, he should do so. Since it's just one act, and therefore you could. If it would be multiple acts, then no. Right, because of multiple slaughterings. Number 3, a person who slaughters an animal on the holiday is permitted to pull off the wool by hand from the place where he wishes to slaughter it, right? Because you got to get to the neck, and if it's full of wool, you need to separate it, provided he does not remove it from its place, but rather leaves it there tangled with the remainder of the wool on the animal's neck. When slaughtering a fowl, by contrast, right, there isn't the wool there that's covering him to get a proper slaughter. One may not pull out the feathers, for by doing so is the usual procedure. Thus, one would be performing a forbidden labor, pulling off feathers on the holiday, which is not allowed. Pulling off the feathers, it's marit, as it's. Number 4, when a person skins the hide of an animal on the holiday, he should not salt it, right? You slaughtered the animal, you have a hide, you shouldn't salt it. for salting is one of the leather making processes, right? And that's one would be performing forbidden labor, and it's not necessary for food preparation, right? It's, making the salting the hide of the animal. One may, however, deposit it in the place where people will tread on it so that it will not spoil. This leniency was permitted only for the sake of the holiday celebration, so that a person will not refrain from slaughtering an animal, right? You might not, oh, I'm going to slaughter the animal. I'm going to have now I'm going to have the hide of the animal. It's going to get spoiled if it's going to be left. I can't do anything with it. So they said, okay, you know what? Put it down on the floor. People will tread on it, and that will prevent it from being spoiled. Right? It's permitted to salt meat to be roasted on this hide. To be roasted on this hide, one may act with guile regarding this matter. What does that mean? One may salt a small portion of meat on this place, another small portion in another place, until the entire hide has been salted. So the hide is still on the animal. You salt the whole thing, even though maybe you only need a part of it. You do that, and that way you have, in this manner of guile is permissible. Number 5. When does the above apply? When one is salting the meat for roasting, and much salt is not required, so it's not much of a task. If, however, one is salting it for cooking, much salt is required, and it's a bigger task, then it's forbidden to salt the meat on a hide. Similarly, it is forbidden to salt fats, nor one may flip them or spread them on the staves in the wind, because they are not fit to be eaten, right? Can't have any benefit from it on the holiday. Number 6, when a person skins an animal on the holiday, he should not employ the technique referred to as regal. What is regal? A person removes all the meat from the hole made on one foot, leaving the entire hide intact without being torn. This is forbidden because it means that skinning involves great effort and it's not necessary for the holiday. So like you're doing it in a way so it makes it easier then to handle this. You're doing this in order for the hide, and since there's a lot of effort involved over here in the skinning, therefore don't do it because it's not part of the holiday celebration. Similarly, it is forbidden to cut a handle into the meat to make it easy for handling. For the prohibition applies only with the handle that is made with a knife, thus restricting the butcher from following his ordinary practice. A butcher may, however, make a sign in the meat. So, it's a butcher. He's using some of the meat for himself, but some of the meat he's going to use it maybe afterwards. He could sell it. So he's got to make what's what. So he can't do the normal procedure, but he can make a sign on meat. Number 7, when we may pour hot water over the head and the feet of the slaughtered animal and singe it in fire to remove its hair. We may not, however, apply lime clay, or loam for that purpose, nor maybe we trim it with scissors, because that's the normal way of doing it. And remember, the hair on the animal is not about the eating of it. It's about having the hide thereafter. So that we're not allowed to do it in the regular way, but to just put hot water or singe it with fire to remove the hair is permissible. We may not pair a vegetable in a decorative fashion. We may, however, trim food that has thorns, artichokes or cardoon, in a decorative fashion, because then that's, you need to remove the thorns. So while you're removing the thorns, you can do it in a decorative fashion. Doing it in a decorative way is a normal, professional way. You don't do it in the professional manner. That's the ideal here. Number 8, it is permitted to knead a large dough on the holiday. If a person kneaded the dough on the day before the holiday, he may not separate challah from it on the holiday, right? So you knead it before the holiday, but now you need to separate challah, right? Challah, that part that you give to the Kohen. So you're not allowed to do that. If he needed it on the holiday, he may separate a holiday and give it to the priest. Right. Then, if you did it on the holiday, remember you're allowed to do this on the holiday because it's going to be tastier. If the dough is impure or the challah became impure, the challah should not be baked. For we are not allowed to bake on a holiday only for the sake of eating. This challah must be burnt because it's impure. This is talking about in the times of in the Holy Temple when you couldn't eat this on the holiday, and therefore you would have to burn it, and therefore it's not for the sake of eating on the holiday. So therefore do it afterwards. We may not burn it on the holiday because we do not burn sacred food that became impure on the holiday. For the burning of sacred food that has become impure is a positive commandment, even though it's a positive commandment to burn sacred food that became impure, right? But that's one commandment. We have two commandments when it comes to the holiday, one of the positive and one negative commandment, and their positive and negative commandment. The holiday override the positive commandment of burning the impure challah. Number 9, what should one do with the impure challah then? Leave it until the evening and burn it then. Now, if the holiday is on Pesach, leaving challah unburned until the day after the holiday would make it leavened bread. Unleavened, we're not allowed to eat leavened bread, only unleavened bread on Pesach. So what should you do? One should not separate the challah from the dough. Instead, one should bake the entire impure loaf and then separate the challah after it has already been baked as matzah, because that way you'll have at least matzah and you'll take away the challah at that point. Number 10, we may not bake in a new earthenware oven on the holiday. This is a decree instituted, lest the oven crack open, spoiling the bread and tainting a person's festive joy. Right? New oven, back in the day, may not be so good, may not work so well, and therefore may not bake things properly. Therefore, don't bake a new earthenware oven on the holiday. We may not rake out the coals and the ashes or in the oven or the range. We may, however, press them down. If baking or roasting is impossible unless we rake it out, coals and ashes, it is permitted to do so. So this is an activity that is of an activity that we shouldn't do unless it's necessary to do because it is a biblical act. We may seal the opening of an oven with mud or sediment or from the riverbank, provided that it was made soft on the previous day. It is forbidden to mix clay on the holiday. We may, however, mix ashes with water to form clay-like mixture to seal the opening of an oven. That way, it bakes things properly. That's why we want to seal it. But with the mud, it's a big procedure, and therefore we don't do it. Number 11. We may not apply oil to a new range or an oven on the holiday, nor may we rub it with a cloth, nor apply cold water to it after heating it to seal it. When it is necessary to apply cold water to lower an oven's temperature so that one's baked within it is permitted to do so. In other words, to do it for the sake of the oven, we're not allowed to, but for the necessity of what's cooking in there, that will make it better, that we're allowed to. We may not heat stones with the intent of roasting or baking upon them because this seals them. We may not heat or bake in an earthenware oven and heat water in a cauldron. Again, the idea of sealing. Number 12, we may not make cheese on a holiday, for cheese will not lose its flavor if you prepared it the day before the holiday. In contrast, one can crush the spices in an ordinary manner on the holiday. For if you crush it before the holiday, it's going to lose flavor. Salt, however, may not be crushed in the holiday unless one tilts the pestle, crushes it in a bowl, or deviates from the normative way of doing it. This is a restriction because salt doesn't lose its flavor if you crush it before the holiday. One may not grind pepper in a pepper mill because that's the normative way. Instead, we must crush it in a pestle like other spices. Number 13, we may not crush groats in a large grinder. We may, however, crush it in a small grinder because this is a deviation from the norm. In the Holy Land of Israel, it is forbidden to doing so even in a small grinder, for the grain that grows there is of a higher quality and will not lose its flavor if it is crushed before the holiday. Number 14. Although flour is sifted on the day prior to the holiday and its bran removed, it may not be sifted again on the holiday unless there's a pebble or a sliver of wood in it that fell into it. This is permitted, however, if one deviates from the norm by sifting with the back of the sifter, sifting over the table or the like. So again, the whole idea here is that we don't do the normative way. We don't want to come on the holiday to do things, even though this is food preparation, but some of the preparation could have done before, and we don't want to come to be mizalzel, to not give proper honor and joy to the holiday. Number 15, one may remove grains from the husk, remove legumes from the pods, and blow air over them to cause the husk to fall, using both hands with all one's power, and then partake of them. One may use a tray or a pot with compartments, but not a sifter or a strainer, because that's the normative way, is a sifter and a strainer. Similarly, a person who separates the pods of the legumes from the legumes themselves on the holiday may separate them in an ordinary way in his bosom or in the pot. He may not, however, use a strainer and a tablet or a sifter. Number 16, when does the above apply? When there is more food than waste. When, however, there is more waste than food, one should separate the food and leave the waste. If, however, more difficulty is involved in separating the waste from the food than in separating the food from the waste, one should separate the food from the waste, even if there's more food than waste. Because you're taking away the good, the bad from the good from the bad, is the issue over here. Number 17. When we may not filter mustard using a filter designated for that purpose, since it appears that one is performing a forbidden labor selecting. Which selecting is not allowed. We may, however, mix raw egg with mustard in a mustard strainer, and then mustard will undergo a process of refinement naturally. Right? It's not going to happen. It's just a natural thing, and it's not the ordinary way of doing things. If the filter was already hanging over the container before the commencement of the holiday, it is permitted to filter wine through it on the holiday, because the filter is already there, so that leniency is there. By contrast, the person may not hang a filter on a holiday, so that it will not be following his weekday practices. That's the distinction we want to make between weekday and the holiday. We may, however, act with guile and hang a filter and hold pomegranates, use it for that purpose, and then hang the dregs of the wine in it so that the wine will filter through. Even though that's something you should have done earlier, we're allowed to do this on the holiday in order that you can have a good celebrative holiday. Phew. Okay. I need some feedback over here. So I did the first half. I read it inside the Hebrew, gave my own, for the most part, I gave my own translation. I didn't use it from the English. Second part, I just read from the English and gave some explanation. It went much quicker doing it that way. That being said, it's still a long time, much quicker. Which one is more comprehensive, first or second? Which did you comprehend better?
The second.
The second, Davida.
Yes, the second.
The second, who was that?
Yes, the second for me as well.
The second was more you comprehended better. Okay. Anybody the first? David, for you was the second, right?
Second.
Second.
Second, okay.
Second as well.
Second as well. I second it.
And I second that.
Although
Okay.
I like to hear the Hebrew, I like to follow it to learn the pronunciations, but sometimes it takes quite a long time to do all that.
Yeah, I actually had planned to do the whole thing in the Hebrew and the English, but then I just saw how long it took the first part. Even though the first chapter was the longest chapter. It was the longest chapter. So it did take longer, but it definitely goes quicker. I might mix it up. Maybe we'll mix it up a little bit, so you get a
That'd be
little
okay.
bit. Does that sound good?
Yeah,
Is everybody
that'd be
okay with that, with the idea of mixing it up?
Yes, that sounds
This
good.
is good, Rabbi.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll do a little, I might be less Hebrew. Maybe what I'll do, actually, I'm thinking like this. Maybe the beginning of each halacha, start reading it in the Hebrew. So then you get the first phrases in the Hebrew, and then maybe continue with the English. We'll play with it.
Right, that's
I'll
good.
need your input on this. Okay.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll learn. Okay. And the truth is, today I did everything. My sons probably will just do with the Hebrew, and maybe then, therefore, I might just do with the English just to balance it. Okay. We will continue. All right, folks. You're amazing.
Rabbi, I
Thank
think
you.
there's a question.
Thank you.
Oh, yes,
Rabbi.
questions.
Have a
I'm
wonderful
sorry.
day.
Rabbi.
Yes. Okay.
Enjoy
If
it.
anybody has questions, yes, we have a few moments for questions. Go ahead.
So
Gotcha.
Rabbi, I asked in regards to preparing food for the holiday and for Shabbos when the holiday falls on a Friday, well, not Friday, like on a Thursday, and it's a 2-day holiday, and by Erev Shabbos, you still can't cook. So what I've been doing is preparing before the holiday and before Shabbos for both. And I wanted to make sure that that is correct.
Well, if let's say Yom Tov is on Thursday, Friday, starts Wednesday night and goes Thursday, Friday, right? So we make an Erev Tavshilin on Wednesday or on
Right.
Thursday, right? We make an Erev Tavshilin. We're going to learn these laws. We're going to get there, but just briefly, just to make sure. Erev Tavshilin means that we're joining the profane day to the second day of the holiday that we already started. We already started preparation, and all we're doing is continuing the preparation. Because remember, we said each day is a holy day, and you can't prepare one day for another day. You can prepare a mundane day, a weekday for a holy day, right? Shabbos or Yom Tov, but you can't prepare for Yom Tov for Shabbos or Shabbos to Yom Tov. But that is a rabbinic law. That's not a biblical law. It's a rabbinic law. So the same rabbis came and said, well, when you're going to have 3 days, okay, Diane.
Okay.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
So the same rabbi said, right, in order to have the pleasure of Shabbos and the pleasure of Shabbos, so we should have the pleasures of Shabbos. So that if you're going to prepare Wednesday for Shabbos, that's not going to be so good. So therefore, start your preparations before by making, setting aside two things beforehand, and then when Friday comes, continue your preparation for Shabbos. That's but we're going to learn those halachas. But that's the idea.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? All right. I thank you all. Have a wonderful day. You're amazing.
Liba has a question.
Oh, Liba, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't see. Oh, you're right. Your hand is up. Go ahead, Liba.
Oh, sorry, Rabbi. It's just very quickly. For the high holidays, our shul, because they're rebuilding, they have been having outdoor services that's much farther away, and it's a very long walk for me. So on Rosh Hashanah, I take a bottle of water, and on Yom Kippur, I take a blanket and a bucket Tehillim. And I don't know, is that okay to carry?
On your Rosh Hashanah, it's okay to carry as long as it's not Shabbos. On Yom Kippur, it's not okay to carry. So have those things prepared beforehand in your place, so it's there for you.
So when I walk on Yom Kippur, I'm nothing. You can't carry
Nothing.
anything, even if it's not food related.
No, nothing. Yom Kippur is like Shabbos. Shabbos, you can't carry anything, right? We just learned those laws, right?
But I'm sorry, I got it mixed up because I was thinking of on Yom Tov and
No, no,
what
no,
you
no.
can
We
carry.
learned yesterday. We learned the laws of Yom Kippur yesterday, right?
Yes, I just was mixing them up with the I was mixing that up with the Yom Tov laws.
Yeah. Don't mix them up.
Thank you.
Definitely don't do that. Yeah. So you need Yom Kippur to prepare wherever you're going to be, the siddur, the whatever things you need there to be there. So when you get there, you just have it. Now, if it's like chilly out and you want to wear a little cardigan, you could, because you're wearing it. You're not carrying it. You can wear clothes, but you can't carry clothes. So if, like, you're taking a blanket, you said maybe you want to leave the blanket there, but if it's like a little chilly and you want to wear something, wearing you're allowed. Okay, David.
Yes, I had a question
Go ahead.
about 1 second. It's 1 second. Yeah, echoing. Okay. You mentioned certain markings need to be made during the sabbatical year. I'm just trying to remember what you're talking
No,
about.
that was the butcher. No, that wasn't sabbatical year. Remember, we don't slaughter today an animal in order to, and we don't do that because today, even though the Rambam speaking about slaughtering, right? We're talking about slaughtering an animal. You could slaughter an animal. We don't do that today, because to be able to do everything appropriately and properly, is going to be a bit of a challenge. So, but the law that it's speaking about is like a butcher slaughters, right? He's using some of the meat for it. So slaughtering, you can't slaughter half an animal or just the part you want. You have to slaughter the entire animal. But it's a butcher, and now after the holiday, he's going to use it for his sale, which is okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's using part of it for Yom Tov. That's okay. That's okay to do that. But no, so there were ways that they did things professionally to make markings that that I know that this is set aside for this and this is set aside for that. Don't do that. You have to do it non-professional way, and so on. That was the gist of that halacha.
So just an indication to separate different things.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, folks. Thank you. You're my inspiration.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God
Bye,
bless you
everyone.
all. Bye, Irma. Good to
Thank
see
you
you
so
on
much,
board.
Rabbi.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Be
Thank you.
well, everybody. Bye-bye.